Let me just check if my audio is working. Yep, my audio is working, and that's good. That's very good. Excuse me, guys, if you hear the menu with like the rolling waves and everything. Forgive me if you do hear that. And I know that I am not doing the face cam today. To be honest with you, I didn't really feel like doing it right now, so I thought, we'll just put on some type of concept art and we'll just record that way. And also, I don't have my headset on, so I'm using my microphone on my camera. So yeah, that's something that you guys probably don't know. It'd be weird if you guys did know I was doing that. But today we got a few topics that I would like to talk about. And the reason I would like to talk about them is because I haven't been up here for a while, and because I haven't been up here for a while, I haven't been able to tackle all the things that have come out over the past couple of weeks. I think the last time I did an episode was like 2-3 weeks ago. It's been a while for sure. It's been a while for sure, and it being a while, I thought I'd make a video on my thoughts. Discussing all the content but information we've received through job listings on Naughty Dog Twitter and everything, and how it points to us getting a very factions online, some type of online multiplayer games coming out, and actually a temporary job listing for it, for like a trailer. So yeah, we got that. Then we're going to talk about Abby Changes the Story. And then we're going to talk about Remembering Joel, because it's been a while. It's been almost 9 months since he's passed away, that he died, and I'm going to talk about how that pain that we felt, it doesn't really disappear. It's it's very realistic how he died, and how the feeling that you have, especially if you're someone like me who's been so in love with this game for years. So. Yeah, we're going to be talking about these three things. I don't know how big the episode is. We might have to put a pause between them, because my dinner's being ready, so getting prepared to be ready. So, it's going to be a little bit. Hopefully, we won't take too much of your time, and we won't take up too much time on this episode. But if I do, I'm going to have to, go get it, and so I'm going to have to pause it and kind of, take a break for like a 30-second, maybe a minute break. And then I'll come back in here. We'll resume our conversation. But today obviously, we're going to talk about the factions. Okay, factions. Factions has always been one of the most unique multiplayer games that we have ever actually been able to play. At least for me, it's one of the most unique. And not only is it the most unique, but it's like one of the only games, the multiplayer games that I've played, that has such a longevity, that it's endured a long amount of time, and it's built its own platform, basically. And there are, I would say, thousands even perhaps of players who have continued to play this game for the past 6-7 years, and it's still it's not. I don't know if it's gone up or down, but to be honest with you, it's a very participating community where there's a lot of people in it, and it's still up after like 6-7 years, which is very incredible. And some of my content earlier in my career on YouTube has been Factions. Factions has been, I would say, a cornerstone, but it's been one of those things in my channel that really kind of was interesting and really fun to edit. Really fun to put out, because what I would do with certain multiplayer videos, I would literally cut out the parts that were very boring and very slow, and just get right to the actions. And I give it some cool name, you know. Like I remember a few, like Hell on Earth is one of I called them. I think the Death of Happiness or something like that. It was really cool. It was like something you would name like a metal song or something. They were very interesting things. And so that was my first thing on Factions as a whole. As Faction just as a game, for the first game, it was incredible. It was a unique game, and I still play it to this day, guys. I've been playing The Last of Us for years, and obviously right now I have a hard time. Obviously, I've said this before. I have a hard time playing the first story. Excuse me, not campaign, the story, because of what happens in the second game. I have a hard time playing the first one, and I have never been able to play it. After The Last of Us Part 2 came out, I wasn't even able to look at the application itself on the menu of the PlayStation, because it brought back such bad emotions, and it just brought me to tears sometimes, or almost to tears at least. And it was just really hard for me to just sit there and watch and look at this, you know, while thinking of Joel in this time. So it was really difficult. It was really difficult. And then like a month or two ago, I started getting back into the Factions, you know, still having to deal with the soundtrack that comes with it, because like I said, I have so many emotions with the first game. I've bonded with both of these characters, and a lot of the characters in there, and even this, I spent an entire channel dedicated to this one game, you know, and so it's very important, you know. So I think that Factions itself for the first game was unique. It was a lot more unique than what a lot of people would say it is. One, there were some people who didn't like it. I remember one of the members of my family, they played The Last of Us Part 1 in the story, then they played the multiplayer. They loved the story, but when they got into the multiplayer, they just couldn't get into it. I don't know if it's because they kind of played it the way that it originally came out, because, you know, when it originally came out, people were slow, the gameplay wasn't fast, there wasn't all these movements and maneuvers you can do to avoid gunfire and get better at the combat and the gameplay. There wasn't that back then, you know, so maybe he was, you know, in that, and he just didn't really think it was that, he couldn't really get into it, which was fine, because once again, it's unique. It's not like it's not a, you know, some type of normal franchise of Call of Duty or Battlefield or some other game that you played before. It's very different. For instance, you can't run unless you will take the risk of being seen on a map, which is pretty hard not to see unless you're not looking at the mini-map. You know, there's so much about Factions that is so good that I think that a lot of people, you're either going to have two type of reactions to it. One, you liked it, or two, you just couldn't get into it. You know, I just think it's one of those two. I don't think you'd be like, it was the same as everybody else. You know, no, it's very unique, and I liked it, and I still play it to this day. Though it has not had an update for the multiplayer for quite some time. I think it hasn't had an update since like 2015. I mean, it's been like 5 years since an actual update for this game, which is fine. You know, it would be kind of nice and cool for them to add something into the game to get people back onto it. But you know, they're working on stuff. They worked on Part 2. Now they're working on Factions Part 2. So it's, you know, it's yeah. So I understand why they have not actually done anything with the Factions, and it's another title. I mean, I think they did all that they wanted to do with this game regarding to Factions and to the story. You know, with Left Behind, DLC, you know, all that stuff. I think they kind of were just like, okay, we did everything we wanted to do with the game. Now let's go to another one, and we'll keep this on the shelf. And so that's kind of what happened. And now, a couple of months ago, I think, I don't know if it was before they released it or after it, but they told us that Factions will not be part of Last of Us Part 2. In other words, there won't be a multiplayer for Last of Us Part 2. There just won't be. And I think it's because, one, they've said this before, that it is their most ambitious title they've ever undergone. There is no other title that they have worked on that is so ambitious and was so anticipated and just so filled with hype than The Last of Us Part 2. Part 2 was one, I would say, when it comes down to hype, dude, it was one of the most hypest games ever. All right, it was crazy hyped up, and that's the good thing about it. And with that being in there, they wanted to work on that game alone. They did not want something else, getting the attention from the game other than the story itself. So they kind of worked separately on it. And the second reason I would say, and this once again, this is true. This is a fact that this has come from Naughty Dog. They have stated this, that they're also very ambitious and they have a kind of a vision for Factions 2, and which is great. They have made I'm only aware they've only made 2 multiplayer games for 2 franchises, and that's Uncharted and The Last of Us. And both of them are extremely entertaining, guys. Don't get me wrong. They are extremely entertaining. Don't get that wrong. They are really fun to play. And with Factions 2 coming out, or whenever it's going to be coming out, I think it may be coming out this year. If not this year, next year. Who knows. But they are going to be releasing it. And whenever they release it, I do believe that it's going to be great. I like this gameplay of The Last of Us Part 2. I love the combat. I love the graphics. I love the mechanics. I really loved it. It was really good. It was brutal. It was violent, and it was really consistent with the world they were in. And I really liked it. It's just where you get to the story where it gets very complicated. For me, and where all the division takes place. That's where the land of division takes. Where all pretty much all that stuff occurs is when you get into the story, into the characters. So, but Factions is a great game for Part 1. It was great. I love it. I still love it. And when we talk about Factions for The Last of Us Part 2, there is many things they can do with this, because I have rarely ever heard of a game. They released a story, and then like a year later, their next project was to work on a multiplayer for that project, for that that title they just released. It's rare that you hear that they make 2 separate games on the exact same world. And Naughty Dog doing that is because they did not want to give the traditional, online mode. They didn't just want to give the traditional, get it there, get a little customization, get a little loadouts, maps, etc., all those things. And, matchmaking. They didn't just want that. They are going to be doing something else with this, that I think. Because if that was the case, they would have just done that already. And because I really like what they're doing. I'm not kidding. I think this is a really, really good choice for Naughty Dog to do. Why? Because when they focused on The Last of Us Part 2 and had the story only in it, they dedicated all their time and all their energy and all their minds and their strength to the game of Part 2, the story of Part 2. Now they're putting all of their efforts, all of their focus and determination and ambition towards the factions, the multiplayer. Now you both can have 2 games, 2 modes from the exact same world that are just good. They're deep. It's very deeply thought about, and I think that it's a great choice they did there, So, I mean, that's what I personally think. You don't have to share the same thing as my idea. Obviously, you don't have to. I'm pretty sure no one out there is gonna, or not all, and not everyone is gonna agree with me on that. But I encourage your own thoughts respectfully and honorably, not the opposite of that. So yeah. So what do I think about the Factions coming out? What do I think? Is there a trailer coming out soon? Are we going to get it this year? Because that is if I feel like we're going through Part 2 of The Last of Us Part 2. When The Last of Us released and it was in this big giant hiatus, it was silent for every year until something came out, or some significant event that was related to the game. That's when they released it. That was it. And I just kind of feel like that's how it is now. And I think there's some agreement they had with Sony is that they can't really speak much about the games anymore. They can't just give it away. They have to be quiet about it. And so yeah, I mean, I think that we are going to get a trailer. I do think that, obviously, if they're going to be selling it this year, yes, they are going to be giving us a trailer soon. My guess, it would be somewhere around spring or summer. And then near around fall or winter, they'll give it to us. Now, I know that's very weird for me to give such a long thing for just a multiplayer project. But we must remember that they are making a solo project for a multiplayer game. There is so much more to this. They are going to upgrade Factions 1. They're going to make Factions 1, they're going to build upon it. It's no longer going to be, once again, it's no longer be some traditional multiplayer game or mode. It's going to be a game that has been thought out. It's going to be different than all the other multiplayer games that they've done. And I could say different than all the other multiplayer games out there. It's very rare for one person to just gather the entire team to work on this one project. It's very, very, very rare for someone to do that. And I say that because it's for me, because I haven't really seen many games like that. I haven't played many games that have that and have done that. Who have made a story and have dedicated all their thoughts and all their team and their development team to that one part of the story, of one part of the game, which is the story, then turn around and do the exact same thing with the multiplayer. I've never seen that before. And so, when we discussed Factions on the Factions 2, I think that it's going to be like a game. It's pretty much going to be like a game. It's going to have a little bit of time to make. Now, surely it's not going to be The Last of Us Part 2. If a multiplayer game takes a couple of years to make, it better be pretty good. It'll be like a game, or it'll be like a story rather than a multiplayer. And so we don't know, man. We don't know. We don't know what direction they're going. We don't know if they're going in a battle royale direction, a free world direction where you're like in Red Dead Redemption 2 is multiplayer, or Red Dead Redemption 1 is multiplayer, like a free roam, free world type of multiplayer. We don't know if it's going to be like a standard like they did with Last of Us Part 1's Factions, where it was just matchmaking and you have all these matches, 4 versus 4, supplied raid, you pretty much got to eliminate all of their reinforcements, and then, survivors, it's pretty much search and destroy, just without destroying, it's like rounds elimination, basically, and you got to eliminate the opposite team for one round for like 4 rounds. And then there's obviously interrogation, where you have to interrogate people to get get intel or information about where the safe is at. And once you interrogate enough people, you can find it, and then you have to go get it, which is most likely in their territory or their spawn. So yeah, I mean, those are only 3 game modes. So they might be making more game modes. They might be doing something much as more as battle royale or free roam. We don't know what they're doing. They can do so much with this game that sure, it's going to take a little bit. And I don't really think Naughty Dog's one of those people they're just going to throw something out there, and not put their heart and soul into it. They put their heart and soul for Part 2. They're definitely going to do it for this one. And I think they've done that pretty much with every single game they've ever made, is they put their heart and their soul into it. And I think it's always, especially when Neil Druckmann is directing it. So, yeah, I mean, that's how I perceive all this stuff. It's how I perceive how Faction 2 will go. I think it'll be around spring, summer, and then it'll come out ready around fall or winter. Because I just think that it's gonna be a bigger multiplayer experience for us. So it's PlayStation, it's Sony, it's Naughty Dog. History tells us things. It tells us that these people, they most likely will not just give it to you. They're gonna try to build up around it. They're gonna try to do certain things. They're gonna try to get people talking, because they do it all the time. Like when they're being interviewed and it comes up, they're like, "Yeah, we're working on it, but nothing big's coming up." It just makes you think about it even more. Or when Neil Druckmann zipped his lips twice, So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. That's how I view Factions. I do believe the listing is for the multiplayer. I don't think it's for a new title right now. I think after they get off Factions 2, I think they'll go on to their next project. And that is something else I'd like to talk about, but later. where it involves the Punisher. I mean, it was one of those things I saw on social media, which is crazy. So yeah, guys. That's the first one for us is Factions. It's just an overlooking and kind of a summary of what I think about Factions and how it may go, and when it may come out, and all the variations, the variety of things they can go in, the direction they can go in. It's just a variety of directions they can go in. The second thing that we're going to be talking about today is Abby changes the story. Now, many people don't understand when I say that. People are either one, immediately going to understand what I'm saying, or they won't understand what I'm saying. Why do I say that Abby changes the story? Well, because The Last of Us Part 1 kind of gave us this idea of Part 2. It was all about Joel and Ellie. It was all about them getting to a certain objective. And you always thought these characters would never die. You thought these characters would live. You thought these characters were just going to be together, and that they were always going to be together in Part 2 and Part 3. But Abby, she changes the entirety of the entirety of that. She like a spinoff of The Last of Us, and it was just, so it just felt like a spinoff. Last of Us Part 2. It felt like a spinoff. It didn't feel like The Last of Us. This wasn't. And I was like, this isn't The Last of Us I was expecting. I was expecting something a little bit more, I was expecting something a little bit more that involved Joel and Ellie. I throughout the half of the story, you feel like Joel's forgotten about, and Ellie's not even a thought about the story anymore. You're just playing as Abby for the other half of the game, and it's like you don't even. This is like a spinoff. It's like you're playing two different games, and it's nuts. It was just really hard to get in there, and that's why I say Abby changed the story. She changed it. At least in my opinion, and at least in my perspective of how I looked at Last of Us Part 2 before it came out, she changed the story. It obviously is not about them two anymore. It has shifted. Now, don't get me wrong, it still has stuff to do with Ellie and Joel, but not the way that it did in the first game. And I wanted it to be that way. I wanted it to be exactly that way in that sense, where it was exactly the same. All right, where it had that one. It just had that one difference. It had that one difference, but it didn't get rid of Joel and Ellie being involved in the game, in the story. She just changed everything. Her doing that, and then not only killing Joel, but then she is like a character you play as. So more than you played as Ellie is the first part. You get 3 days for Ellie and then 3 days for her. Changing perspectives, and you see how they collide, and you pretty much see the destruction you caused as Ellie. And you get to see the pain that you've caused Abby and everybody else. And it's just, she changes the Last of Us series so much, and that's how it goes with certain games. That's how it goes with certain movies. That's how it goes with books. It pretty much goes to anything. Is that there's that one character that they have decided to create that changes the very flow of the game, like the theme, the setting, the feeling that you would get for Part 1. It was like you get Part 2, it's like, oh, it's going to be just like this one, just differently. It may be different in a lot of areas, but there is one thing that I was expecting into this game, and that was that the one thing they would not change was that it was all about Joel and Ellie. Those are the two. That was the one thing that I was clinging on to going into Part 2, and that got destroyed. Once again, she changed completely the entire story. No longer it's about Joel and Ellie anymore. Abby has kind of inserted herself into their story. Why? Because now because once again, Part 3 is not just going to